We are ready to animate in Moho. We've been working on frame 0 for the drawing and the rigging. Now we're going to move to frame 1 and start animating. A couple of things to get to know before we start animating. You can animate layers. You can animate their position, rotation, and scale just like After Effects. You can animate bones that we've set up. You can also animate the art per layer because they're all vectors. So there are 3 ways to animate. We're going to do 2 of them in this lesson, but if you ever need to, let's say, animate the color of the cab changing over time, it's possible, but it's pretty rarely used. Down in your timeline, so we're going to live here for a little while. Lots of tools. The channels is where we're going to be most of the time. There are a couple of other tabs that are not frequently used. This one here is the type of keyframe, and it should be set to smooth. Mine's set to another setting because I use other settings. This is onion skinning, really awesome tool that we'll use coming up, and you can control how you see it. And then markers, similar to After Effects. So if you want to put markers on your time frame and plan out your animation, that's certainly a tool available to you. Controls, you can right click and drag the timeline back and forth. If you absolutely need to zoom in, there's these weird tools here, so you can zoom in to your timeline there, but not much. You can only zoom in once. It's going to keep track of keyframes in a very different way, but I think very intelligent way. And then you can use the back and forth, left and right arrow keys to move forward on your timeline. So I just pressed right arrow once. So I'm on frame 1. Also, there's some controls right here. You should see frame 1 on your screen. Okay, where do you want this thing to start? And what do you want to animate? You got to figure out what's going on here. And typically we have a storyboard, but we're just playing around. So I'm going to move my whole machine to the starting point, similar to After Effects. I don't have any keyframes, and there's no turn on animation in this program. It's just on all the time. So make sure that you're kind of aware of that. One thing that I'd like you to press is the auto freeze keys. This is just a better way to animate. It just makes sure that things are keyframed when you make a change. If you don't have this on, you might see some floating of animation over time, which can happen. The first animation I'm going to do is just purely position keyframing for the whole machine folder. So it's kind of like a group of objects that are just moving in time. That is done right here through the transform layer tool. So we have the option of rotating, moving, or scaling. I'm on frame 1. I'm just going to drag this back to kind of the right-hand side of my frame here, this kind of purple line. You'll see this line here, and that's because it's saying, well, frame 0, if you go back to frame 0, it's actually there, but frame 1 is here. Don't worry about that. What really matters is from frame 1 on. Okay, remember we're at 12 frames per second, so every 12 frames there is 1 second, and it kind of spells it out for you here. So let's go forward in time. I'm going to say maybe 3 seconds, and just drag this forward to its resting place. You can see it's adding in-betweens for you, just like After Effects. There are 2 keyframes there now. These are circles. These are smooth, auto-eased keyframes for you. You don't have to press F9 or anything. And you can scrub and you can see what's happening. It's starting from here and it's going to here. You can also press the space bar and play it. It's going to have some jitter to it. If you don't like that timing, like I don't like my timing, I'm going to drag that keyframe to the left. I'm just going to select it, move it to the left. It was a little too slow for me. All right, so our first animation. This is the channel that's being animated right here, and that's just layer translation or position. So you can animate whatever you want to on the layer, position, transformation, scale, or rotation. The next thing I want to do is animate a bone. So we set up and rigged our bone. Sorry for the noise, my cat's playing in a bag. 2 cats, actually. I'd like to animate a bone. So I'm just going to do a simple bone animation while my rig is moving from left to right. Go back to frame 1. And this time, I'm going to use the Manipulate Bones tool, or Z. And I'm just going to use the main controller, the control arm here. I'm going to animate this one. As soon as I click on it, it puts a bunch of keyframes here. And I'm going to go forward in time, let's say to 2 seconds, and make a change. Maybe it's up like that. And again, lots of keyframes. Don't worry about that. And you can see my machine is moving left and right, and now the bone arm is raising up because that's been animated over time too. So from 0 or 1 second, sorry, 1 frame to 2 seconds, we have 2 animations now. Here's the distinction between white and red. These are white, these are red. White has everything to do with everything on that bone. Red is the selected bone or selected objects frames. So if you really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty and get down to the details, the red channels are the ones to do it, which are very rare, but sometimes necessary. The white ones are just overarching animation for the whole thing. So for example, if I went and I animated the second arm, I'm going to click on that, go forward in time, and pull that up as well. Nothing changes. There's no new keyframes on my timeline. The white channel has everything on it. It's just general, okay, there's animation happening there. However, if I wanted to, I could select a bone, and these keyframes have to do with that bone. It's kind of an elegant way of isolating things without making a mess in your timeline. So it's all about selecting, and then the red channels are for that. So I hope that makes sense. It takes practice to really understand that. Okay, so I've animated my arm. Next, I'd like to study my principle a little bit. My principle, I have 2 of them, are anticipation and follow through. Okay, anticipation is getting ready for an action. So I got to figure out my action. My action would be maybe it's going to scoop. All right, it's going to come down and scoop. That's it. I need to anticipate that. And we're making cartoons, so it should be exaggerated. So instead of just coming down and scooping, I need to get ready for it. I need to go like come up and then down, and then follow through is basically how arms or hair or tails, they follow the main controller, and they are delayed. So this is a good example. I have an arm here, so my main arm is going to come down. It's going to come down, but my shovel is going to lag behind like this. That is follow through. So let's try this demo here. I'm going to go forward a second. And remember, my main action is just kind of this scoop. Okay, so I'm going to come down. Oops, press Z for your manipulate bone tool. I'm going to come down. I'm going to actually just do my little scoop motion. Oop. So it's going to go from 2 seconds to 3 seconds. It's going to scoop, maybe forward a little bit. Scoop. Like that. So down, scoop, up. All right. Here's a good chance to practice anticipation. Instead of it just going down like that, that's very boring. I'm going to put a keyframe. I'm just going to go forward like 4 or 5 frames. And instead of going down, I'd like it to go up. Here's where we can use onion skinning. I'm going to turn that on. And the way this works is you click on a frame, and it's going to give you a ghost of that frame. If you unclick that frame, it's going to take it away. So I want that frame right there to be ghosted. That's where it is in that point in time. So I got to go, oh, my arm actually needs to come up above that section like this. Kind of like that to anticipate it. So it's kind of like up or almost like taking a breath, or if you're jumping, you're crouching down. It's that action before the action. I'm going to turn off my onion skinning. So it's going to come up and then come down. Maybe too exaggerated, but you get the idea. Anticipating. Follow through can also be shown here. This arm right here is moving, but these 2 pieces should lag behind, and it depends on the material. If it's hair or if it's metal, it's going to act differently. but I'm just going to exaggerate this so you can see follow through. As the arm comes down, right here, this arm, these two pieces should be lagging. They should delay. So I'm actually going to go forward in time and bring these two up like this. So those don't rotate at the same rate. I'm actually going to lag this one behind. I'm holding Alt right now to make sure I only rotate that one. So that's one thing you can do, is just delay things. It just creates really interesting movements. We're making cartoons, so make it cartoony. I'm going to do another demo right here. It scoops it up. Okay, so I'm going to show some follow through here. Right here, everything comes up at the same time, but if I just delay these two, kind of an interesting animation. And then the last thing I can do is when it comes up, it just stops right here. I can actually have it come up and then back down. Up, and then maybe it takes a second to come back down. I'm holding Alt again so that I only rotate these. So it comes up and then settles back down. Those things, anticipation and follow through, make animation interesting. If you're not doing it, it's pretty boring. So we're moving well beyond squash and stretch and easing to create some interesting animation. I'm going to do one more thing on my animation as it comes in. This is an interesting thing you can try. This bone that I put on mine is controlling the whole thing. I'm going to select it. Actually, I'm going to actually go back on frame 0. Selecting the bone, going to bone constraints, I'm going to turn on squash and stretch. There's this crazy function here. I'm just going to set my number to 2. So that means I can squash and stretch this bone, and anything controlled with it will squash and stretch with it. And this is how you do it. So frame 1, I'm just going to not touch it. Go forward a little bit, and I'm going to take this controller and I'm going to drag a little bit to the left. It puts a keyframe there. Just kind of make it kind of do that sort of thing. You can put all sorts of keyframes in there if you want to. Let's say if you wanted to retime that, you can select your keyframes, move them forward. You can also copy and paste those, Control C, Control V, if you wanted it to be double. There we go. Finally is we're going to get ready for export. The next video is on exporting, but this is the last frame here. Maybe I give myself another second. I can do one of two things. Alt, Option, right click will set the work area. So you could do that. If you don't do that, you could also go to File, Project Settings, and tell it what frame you're done at. For me, it's 72. So I'd go right here. My end frame would be 72. And OK. And that's what I want to export. I don't want to export everything else. Give your work a save, and we're going to export it in the next video.